I live with my mum and younger brother. My parents are divorced and I don't see my dad anymore. We lived in a 20-plus story apartment. I was 8 years old at the time, and my mum and brother were out on their own, so I was often alone at home. By this time, I had adapted to live alone, and the fact that I was alone in the apartment did not scare me, but there was one moment. My aunt, with her daughter, 15 years old, and son, 12 years old, asked to move in with us. As their apartment was taken away from them because of debts, my family took them in, and we started living together. One day, my aunt's eldest daughter wanted to summon some spirits she saw on the internet. I thought something like Chucky, Queen of Spades, but no. She had a piece of paper with a pencil on top of another to twist, and the answers were yes or no. After we had fun, we threw that piece of paper away and never remembered again, but when I started to stay home alone, I started to hear some rustling, rumbling, and heavy objects falling all the time. I was very much frightened, but I did not tell anyone, as they would not believe me and considered me crazy. The next morning, when everyone sat down to breakfast, my aunt began to behave strangely. She was constantly moving, looking around, and there was an unimaginable horror on her face. It turned out that all ate first and left, and I with my aunt stayed in the kitchen. At one point she asks, "You also saw him?" I was surprised and thought, here is my chance to tell everything that was going on in my soul. After I told her, she was horrified, and the next week she moved with her children to some dormitory. I told my mum everything, and surprisingly she believed it too, and we sold the apartment and moved out. Hi, I would like to tell you a scary story from my life. At that time, the theme of creepypasta was popular, namely Charlie Charlie. We, as well as everyone at that time, tried to summon him. We held hands. My brother and my friend were with us at that time. We lit candles and repeated the phrase, "Charlie, Charlie, come," 3 times. I wanted to scare everyone as always and blew on the pencil. I thought it wouldn't do anything, but it only brought me fear. The night came, my friend left, my grandmother and I, my mom was at work at the time, were about to go to bed. The chair where we were doing these manipulations suddenly started to shake. I'm not kidding. Seriously, I have a cat. It would be logical to blame it on him, but he was in the other room. My grandmother and my brother and I were lying on the bed wondering what the fuck was going on. I was shitting myself. I don't play with mysticism anymore. I want to tell you a story from my life. I was 6 or 7 years old at the time. I was in first grade, and my father usually picked me up from school. But one day when we were walking home, I got ahead of him, and I opened the door first. When I opened it, someone from my brother's room ran into mine, but when I ran after him, he was gone. I looked to see if the windows were open, but all the windows in the house were closed. Of course, when I told everyone that I did not believe me, I just want to scare my brother. He was 5 to 6 years old at the time, and I was punished. If anyone is interested, he looked like this. Black hair, pale coda, height plus 190 centimeters, and he ran in a half crouch looking at me with his eyes. It was very scary. Then we moved 2 years later, but still I am scared every time I remember her. Well, hello everyone. I'm a man who suffers from hallucinations, and unfortunately it's not a problem that's been solved. I'm just used to it and I'm okay with it. Sometimes it's not so good to experience sleep paralysis. It feels like that. It all started when I was a kid. I was into different scary stories like creepypasta and stuff like that. I liked the drawings from there, but for that I got to know the death files. It hit my childhood psyche very hard that I saw such things, and I still do. At first I told my relatives, but they always blamed it on the internet. Although I was brought into it all by my friends, who then, and for my cowardice, joked at me. It was scary to sleep, and to look in dark corners. My brain thought that there was something scary there, and thinks to this day. The scariest of these monsters was the scary Smile dog, the bloody version of him that gives me goosebumps when I remember him. Although it's just a picture of a poor husky that's been mutilated so badly, I can't believe it's photoshopped. Once, when I was about 11, I stayed home by myself. Back then, I was a huge fan of all things mystical and paranormal, and that's when I watched the then popular pony scary movie The Mirror. In a nutshell, it's about how you and your reflection are not the same thing. There were several ways to prove it to yourself. For example, turn off the light, quickly cut off a strand of hair, turn on the light and compare the length of the strands. If you notice that the hair lengths don't match, don't let it show. Pretend that everything is fine and calmly walk away from the mirror. Now he knows you know. Of course, I knew it was all made up, but again, I was very interested anyway. After this video, some time passed, and I decided to make faces at the mirror, having already forgotten about this video. Sometimes I get nervous tics and my head can turn either right or left without warning. This one was one of those times. I'm out there dancing, messing around, and then my head abruptly turns to the right because of a nervous tic, and I turn my head back almost instantly, and oh my God, I swear I said, I saw my reflection still looking to the right, but just a second later, it was looking at me again, and I felt someone else's gaze on me, like I was being stared right into my soul. I instantly remembered that scary story, and I stepped away from the mirror. I was afraid to go near them until the night before my mum came home from work. I have another creepy story when I was at home by myself with a friend, but it's also very long and won't fit in this post.